What value do you put on our culture and our right to decide what happens with us in the future?
I think if you had a referendum today to the folks of Greenland, they would overwhelmingly want independence from Denmark, and they would overwhelmingly want a closer relationship with the United States of America.
I need to rebuke that.
Let's introduce you to Greenland Minister Naya Nathaniel Elsom, Minister of Industry and Natural Resources, and Donald Trump-backing Republican Congressman Andy Ogles. He's introduced a Make Greenland Great Again bill to Congress. Welcome, both of you. Thank you very much for talking to our audience. Minister, your Prime Minister has told Greenlanders today.
Well, we are bewildered and have been so since New Year's Eve, I would say. This is an entirely new situation where an ally is threatening to annex or even occupy us.
Are people preparing for some kind of military invasion in practical terms?
The warnings didn't start with Democrats. They didn't come from cable news panels or campaign ads. They came from inside the room, from people who sat a few feet away, from officials who carried classified binders, who stood in the Situation Room, who watched power exercised up close. And now, one by one, they are stepping forward to say something that should freeze the country in its tracks. This man is not fit to hold the presidency again. What makes this moment different is not the volume of criticism, it's the source. These are not political enemies. These are not activists. These are not career opposition figures. These are people who defended Donald Trump when it mattered, who implemented his agenda, who shielded him from internal revolt, who argued on his behalf when others walked away. And now they're saying the danger isn't hypothetical anymore. It's structural, it's behavioral, it's already underway. This isn't about personality clashes or bruised egos. It's about patterns, about how power is understood, about what happens when loyalty replaces law and retaliation becomes policy. You can feel the shift in how these warnings are being delivered. They're no longer cautious, they're no longer hedged, they're blunt, they're urgent. They sound less like political commentary and more like exit testimony. Inside the Trump White House, there was a moment when the illusion broke, when officials realized they were not serving an office, but a man. When constitutional limits were not seen as guardrails, but obstacles. When disagreement was no longer part of governance, but evidence of betrayal. That's the environment these former officials are describing, and they are describing it consistently, independently, and at personal cost. The names matter because the roles mattered. Secretary of Defense, Chief of Staff, National Security Advisor, White House Counsel. These are positions designed to restrain impulse, not enable it. They are meant to translate presidential authority into lawful action. When the people occupying those roles say they spent their time stopping illegal orders, explaining basic constitutional principles, or deflecting demands that would have shattered norms, that is not normal friction. That is an emergency being quietly contained. Listen to the language these officials are using now. They are not saying Trump made mistakes. They are saying he views power as personal. They are not saying he pushed boundaries. They are saying he does not recognize boundaries. They are not saying he governs aggressively. They are saying he governs vindictively. And when pressed on why they're speaking out now, the answer is always the same. Because the guardrails are gone. What changed is not Trump. What changed is the system around him. In the first term, resistance came from within, from officials who slowed things down, from lawyers who said no, from career professionals who refused to bend. Many of those people are gone now. Some were fired, some resigned, some stayed silent, and some are now speaking out because they believe silence is no longer defensible. When former insiders warn that a president sees the Justice Department as a weapon, they're not speculating. They're recounting conversations. When they say he believes loyalty to him personally outranks loyalty to the Constitution, they're describing directives. When they say he admires authoritarian leaders and envies their control, they're relaying observations made behind closed doors. This is not rumor. This is record. The open letters are especially revealing. They are written in language that professionals rarely use unless something has broken badly. Words like unconstitutional, words like abuse of power, comparisons that are not made lightly. When experienced Republican officials compare a president's behavior to that of a royal despot, they are invoking a specific historical warning, a reminder of why constitutional republics exist in the first place, to prevent the consolidation of power into the hands of one man who believes himself untouchable. These letters did not appear in a vacuum. They were triggered by actions, by the use of executive authority to punish critics, by the revocation of security clearances as retaliation, by the initiation of investigations against former officials who dared to speak publicly, These are not theoretical abuses. These are concrete acts. And they fit a pattern that political scientists, historians, and constitutional scholars recognize instantly. Authoritarian systems do not begin with tanks in the streets. They begin with loyalty tests, with the redefinition of dissent as disloyalty, with the targeting of insiders who know too much and refuse to stay quiet. The message is always the same: cross me and pay a price. And when that message is delivered through official power, not rhetoric, the transformation is already underway. Security clearances are not symbolic. They are livelihoods. For intelligence professionals, former military leaders, and national security officials, a clearance determines whether they can work, consult, or contribute after public service. Stripping one is not a slap on the wrist. It's economic exile. And when that punishment is imposed not for misconduct, but for speech, it crosses a constitutional line. This is why the retaliation matters so much. It's not personal grievance. It's institutional degradation. It signals to every current official that truth-telling carries consequences. That professional judgment can be punished. That silence is safer than integrity. And that calculation corrodes governance from the inside out. What's especially telling is that this retaliation is not limited to former officials. Sitting lawmakers have felt it too. When members of the president's own party face coordinated efforts to remove them for disagreement, it confirms what insiders have been saying for years. In this system, policy disagreement is treated as defiance. Independence is framed as sabotage, and political survival requires submission. The targeting of dissenters within the party sends a chilling signal. It says there is no room for constitutional conservatism, no space for libertarian principles, no tolerance for institutional loyalty. There is only alignment or exile. That is not how democratic parties function. That is how movements centered around a single figure consolidate control. This dynamic explains why so many former officials stayed silent for so long. Speaking out doesn't just cost you favor, it costs you security, reputation, income, community. These are not abstract consequences. They are immediate and personal. And yet, despite that, more insiders are choosing to speak now. That alone should tell us how serious they believe the threat to be. The credibility of these warnings rests on two things: access and sacrifice. These individuals had unparalleled access to presidential decision-making. They witnessed moments the public never saw, and by speaking out, they sacrificed standing within their own political tribe. That combination is rare, and it demands attention. When a four-star general who served as chief of staff says the president does not understand constitutional limits, that is not ideological critique. It is an assessment of fitness. When a defense secretary describes repeatedly blocking unlawful orders, that is not political disagreement. It is damage control. When a national security advisor concludes the president is unfit despite a lifetime of party loyalty, it signals a break so profound it overrides ambition. These officials did not benefit from Trump's downfall. Many were elevated by him. Many defended him publicly. Many believed they could manage him. That belief collapsed over time, replaced by something darker: the realization that management was no longer possible. Inside the administration, the pattern was consistent: impulse first, law second, if at all. Personal grievance elevated to national priority. Enemies defined broadly. Loyalty demanded explicitly. And whenever an institutional barrier intervened, the response was not reflection, but resentment. This is why the warnings emphasize behavior, not ideology. This is not about conservative versus liberal policy. Many of these officials supported aggressive immigration enforcement, deregulation, military strength. They were aligned on substance. What broke the relationship was method, the insistence that power exists to serve the leader, not the public. When former insiders say Trump praised dictators, they're not referring to diplomatic courtesy. They're describing admiration for control, for the ability to silence critics, for the absence of constraint. That admiration was not theoretical. It informed how Trump viewed his own authority. It shaped his frustration with American institutions that refused to bend. And here's where the constitutional stakes become clear. The American system relies not just on laws, but on norms, on the expectation that presidents will not use the Justice Department to punish critics, that they will not deploy intelligence agencies against political enemies, that they will respect the independence of institutions designed to check them. When those expectations collapse, the law alone is not always enough to hold the line. This is why former officials are so alarmed about a second term. In the first, they acted as internal brakes. They slowed, diverted, resisted. In the second, many of those brakes are gone, replaced by loyalists selected precisely because they will not say no, because they believe personal loyalty is the job. The transformation of the executive branch under those conditions is not speculative. It follows a known trajectory. Independent professionals are replaced with ideologues. Decision-making narrows. Information is filtered. The leader hears only affirmation. Reality becomes optional, and the state becomes an extension of personal will. International allies are watching this closely. They read the same letters, they see the same retaliation, and they draw conclusions. If American intelligence officials can be punished for speech, can their counterparts trust information sharing? If political loyalty determines access, can alliances survive leadership changes? The erosion of internal norms has external consequences. Adversaries exploit this erosion. They amplify internal divisions. They point to retaliatory actions as evidence of hypocrisy. They undermine American credibility by citing the words of America's own former officials. This is not abstract reputational damage. It affects coalition building, deterrence, and global stability. The long-term risk is normalization. Once a president successfully uses official power to punish critics without consequence, the precedent is set. The next leader may push further, the line moves, and the republic becomes more about who controls the machinery than how it is used. This is why these warnings are framed as moral, not partisan. They are appeals to constitutional principle, to the idea that no individual is above the system, that loyalty to the country must supersede loyalty to any one leader, that the presidency is a trust, not a weapon. The question facing voters is not whether they agree with Trump's policies. It is whether they accept a model of governance in which dissent is punished and power is personalized. Because once that model is accepted, reversing it is extraordinarily difficult. Many Americans have not fully absorbed the significance of these warnings. Some dismiss them as establishment backlash. Others see them as exaggerated. Still others are simply exhausted by politics. But fatigue does not negate reality, and indifference does not neutralize risk. History is filled with moments when insiders warned and the public shrugged, when professionals raised alarms and were accused of disloyalty, when the erosion of norms seemed tolerable until it wasn't. The United States is not immune to those dynamics. No democracy is. The fact that these warnings come from within the president's own circle makes them harder to dismiss. They cannot be easily written off as partisan attacks. They are confessions, and confessions carry weight. What happens next depends on whether those warnings are heard, not just consumed, but understood. Understood as evidence of a governing philosophy that treats institutions as obstacles and critics as enemies. Understood as a signal that the presidency is being reshaped in dangerous ways. More insiders will likely speak out, not because they want attention, but because the pressure to conform will intensify, because silence will become complicity, because the cost of speaking now may be less than the cost of staying quiet later. These voices will not persuade everyone. They are not meant to. They are meant to inform, to document, to put facts on the record so that future Americans cannot say they were never warned. The responsibility now shifts to the public, to decide whether these warnings are dismissed or weighed, whether constitutional principles are negotiable, whether loyalty to a person is allowed to eclipse loyalty to a system. This is not a moment for slogans. It is a moment for clarity. The former officials who are speaking out are not asking to be believed blindly. They are asking to be taken seriously, to have their testimony evaluated on its merits. They are saying they saw something that scared them, something they tried to contain, something they no longer believe can be contained quietly. And that is why this matters. Not because of politics, but because of power, how it is understood, how it is exercised, and how easily it can be abused when accountability is treated as treason. The presidency was designed to be strong, not unchecked, to lead, not dominate, to serve, not punish. When former insiders say those distinctions are being erased, the appropriate response is not dismissal, it is scrutiny. Because democracies do not collapse all at once. They erode, gradually, legally, with paperwork and justifications and applause from loyalists. Until one day, the system looks familiar, but functions differently. The warnings are coming from people who know the difference, who have lived inside the machinery, who recognize when it is being repurposed. The question is whether the rest of the country is ready to listen. If this analysis resonated, you're part of a group that stays present and pays attention. Subscribe. not for me, but because the truth deserves to be witnessed.